Vera 4 was a planet that had always lived quietly on the edge of the galaxy. Its cities were small, nestled among green forests and wide rivers, and its people were simple but hard-working. They farmed the fertile lands, built homes that reached toward the sky, and dreamed of a peaceful future. But all that peace was gone now. A strange plague had begun to spread across the planet. It started quietly, with a few people falling sick, but soon it became clear that this was not an ordinary illness. Doctors and scientists worked tirelessly, trying every medicine they could create, but nothing seemed to stop it. At the same time, reports came of alien raiders, ships that struck without warning, taking what they wanted and leaving destruction behind. The leaders of Vera 4 tried to send distress signals across the galaxy. They encoded messages in every language, every form of communication, hoping that someone, anyone, would answer. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, but the response was either silence or cold rejection. Many civilizations refused to help, calling Vera 4 too weak, too small, or too unimportant. One night, as the twin moons of Vera 4 glowed over the cities, the council of leaders gathered in the largest hall. Faces were tired, voices filled with worry. "We cannot survive much longer," said Elder Kieran, a man whose hair had turned silver from the stress of these times. "If we do not receive help soon, our people will die, our cities will fall, and our planet may never recover." Another leader, a woman named Lyra, shook her head. "We have sent messages to the Council of Worlds, to every nearby civilization, and still we wait. Perhaps no one will come. Perhaps we are truly alone." Her voice cracked, betraying the fear she tried so hard to hide. It was then that a young messenger, barely 20 years old, stepped forward. His name was Jaren, and he carried a small device that had picked up a faint response from the outer rim of the galaxy. "There is something," he said, eyes wide. "A signal. It is faint, but it comes from the sector beyond the starfields, from a group called the Deathworlders." The council fell silent. Whispers filled the room. Deathworlders. The name was known in legends and stories. They were humans like Vera 4's people, but they had adapted to planets far harsher than any normal world could offer. Their bodies were hardened by extreme climates, dangerous wildlife, and deadly environments. They were fearless, relentless, and often feared by other civilizations. Elder Kieran leaned forward. They actually exist?" Jaren nodded. "Yes, and they are answering. They say they will come." A mixture of relief and apprehension swept over the room. The leaders did not know whether to celebrate or to prepare for a new type of danger. After all, Deathworlders were not diplomats. They were survivors. They came to help, but they did so in their own way, and that way was often strange, powerful, and sometimes frightening. By the following day, people across Vera 4 were looking to the sky. Scouts reported unusual readings, ships traveling through the outer atmosphere at speeds no Veran craft could match. Soon, enormous vessels appeared on the horizon, their dark metal hulls gleaming in the light of the twin suns. The ships descended silently, landing in vast clearings near the cities. From the ships, figures emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, their skin weathered and tough from countless worlds, the Deathworlders looked like living statues of endurance. They carried equipment unlike anything Vera 4 had ever seen, tools that seemed alive, weapons that were simple but terrifyingly effective, devices that could purify water, and machines that could heal disease. The people of Vera 4 watched in awe. Children hid behind their parents' legs, staring wide-eyed at these strange humans, while soldiers and scientists studied them carefully. The Deathworlders moved with purpose, their eyes scanning everything, taking in every detail. They spoke little at first, but when they did, their voices were firm, direct, and commanding. "You called," said one of them, a man named Kale, whose presence made the room feel smaller just by standing there. "We came. Explain the threat." The leaders stepped forward, speaking in careful, precise words. They explained the plague that had swept through cities, the alien raiders that attacked with no warning, and the fear that had gripped every corner of the planet. They described their scientists' failures, their soldiers' exhaustion, and their people's despair. Kale listened silently, his piercing eyes never leaving the speakers. After a long pause, he nodded once, as if the explanation confirmed what he already suspected. Without ceremony, he signaled to the others, and the Deathworlders split into teams. Some went to inspect the cities, examining buildings, streets, and the people themselves. Others moved toward the forests and rivers, checking the natural resources and the land's ability to support recovery. Their methods were strange and often shocking. They uprooted trees not to destroy, but to use their roots and leaves for medicine. They built machines from scrap metal and stone that purified water and cleansed the air. They mapped the forests and rivers, turning every hazard into a potential advantage. It was clear that they did not just fight threats. They transformed environments, making survival possible where it had once seemed impossible. The people of Vera 4 began to understand. These were not ordinary helpers. They were not waiting for orders. They were teachers, engineers, warriors, and healers all at once. And they believed that even a planet like Vera 4, weak and struggling, could rise again if it learned to survive as they did. At night, the Deathworlders set up their camps. Fires burned in carefully chosen patterns, and the sound of work filled the air instead of the usual silence of fear. Children peeked from behind buildings to watch them, fascinated by the strange tools and strange ways of these people. Some soldiers even began to train alongside them, learning techniques that seemed impossible. How to move silently through thick underbrush, how to track enemies by scent alone, how to drink from poisoned water without falling ill. Elder Kieran watched all of this from the council tower, a mix of pride and worry in his heart. "If they can teach us to survive," he whispered to Lyra, "perhaps we have a chance. Perhaps we are not truly alone." Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "It feels strange, doesn't it?" she said. "They are like us, but not like us. Yet somehow I believe they can save us." The days passed quickly. Scouts returned with reports that the alien raiders were still approaching, expecting to find an easy target. But Vera 4 was already changing. The Deathworlders had taught the people to see every tree, rock, and river as part of a strategy. Cities were fortified in ways the raiders could never anticipate. Food supplies were hidden in plain sight. Water was purified and stored in ways that could last through sieges. Even the plague, though still present, was beginning to yield. The Deathworlders had found compounds in the harshest parts of the planet, plants, minerals, and fungi that, when combined with medicine, slowed the illness. Doctors and scientists worked alongside them, learning quickly from methods that had taken centuries to perfect on the Deathworlders' home planets. For the first time in months, the people of Vera 4 felt hope. It was a fragile hope, but it was there, a spark in the darkness, small but alive. And all around them, the Deathworlders moved silently, observing, preparing, and teaching. Elder Kieran finally allowed himself a small smile as he watched Kale and his team in the distance. "They are not just here to help," he said softly. "They are here to show us what we can be, perhaps. We are stronger than we thought." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. "And if we survive this," she said, "we will never forget them. We will never forget what it means to endure, to fight, to rise when all seems lost." Above the horizon, the twin moons of Vera 4 cast a gentle light on the land, and for the first time in months, the people did not feel fear. They felt possibility. And somewhere, deep in the vastness of space, the Deathworlders were already planning the next steps, the next actions that would either save this fragile world or prove that survival was never a given, only earned. The call for aid had been sent, and for the first time it had been answered. The morning sun rose over Vera 4, spilling golden light across cities scarred by sickness and fear. Yet today, the streets felt different. There was movement, not hurried panic, but purposeful activity. The people had awoken to something they had not seen in months: hope. The Deathworlders moved like shadows and giants combined, their presence impossible to ignore. They walked through cities with a steady, commanding pace, taking in every detail. The broken buildings, the empty marketplaces, the faint smell of illness still lingering in the air. Their eyes missed nothing, scanning for both danger and opportunity. Kale, the leader of the Deathworlders, stopped at the edge of the largest city. He surveyed the streets with a quiet intensity. Beside him, a smaller Deathworlder named Sira tapped her fingers against a tablet-like device recording data. "The structures are weak," she said, "but the population is adaptable. They can learn." Kale nodded once. "We do not teach by words alone," he said. "We teach by survival." The people of Vera 4 were cautious at first. Mothers clutched their children, merchants peered from behind shutters, and soldiers held their rifles tightly. The Deathworlders did not ask for permission. They simply began, One group moved toward the rivers. They planted strange devices that filtered the water, removing impurities and disease. Children peeked from the banks as clean water began to flow, sparkling in the sunlight. Others moved to the forests, cutting branches not to destroy but to create medicinal compounds. The Deathworlders worked with speed and precision, their hands steady, their minds focused. In the city center, Kel gathered the leaders of Vera 4 once more. Elder Kieran, Lyra, and several generals joined him in a wide square. "The raiders will come soon," Kyle said, his voice firm. "You are not ready to fight them yet, but you can learn to survive them." "What do you mean?" Lyra asked, uncertainty in her tone. Kale gestured to a nearby building, partially collapsed but still standing. "We will use this city as a classroom," he said. "Every street, every alley, every building can be a defense. You will learn to move, to hide, to fight, and to endure. Survival is not easy. It is earned." The leaders exchanged worried glances. They were not soldiers. Most had spent their lives leading communities, not commanding armies. But they saw the truth in Kale's eyes. He did not promise victory. He promised survival, if they were willing to learn. That afternoon, Kale and his team began training the first group of Vera Werfee's volunteers. Soldiers and civilians alike lined the square, nervous but eager. The Deathworlders started with simple lessons: how to move silently, how to read the land, how to anticipate danger. "You must trust your instincts," Kale said, demonstrating a movement through rubble with perfect balance. "Do not wait for orders, observe, decide, act, every moment counts." The trainees stumbled at first. Their movements were slow, unsure. But the Deathworlders were patient, correcting gently, showing again, explaining with clarity and example. Slowly, the people began to understand. The city itself became part of the lesson. The broken streets were no longer obstacles but tools. Rubble could hide a soldier. Windows could provide vantage points. Even the river could be used as a barrier. Meanwhile, the plague still lingered. But the Deathworlders were relentless in their approach. Sierra led a team through the worst affected neighborhoods, gathering plants and minerals. They created compounds to slow the illness, distributing them carefully and instructing doctors on how to combine them with local medicine. Every day, a small number of people improved. Every day, hope grew. In the forests surrounding the cities, another team worked tirelessly. They examined wildlife, noting how certain creatures survived despite harsh conditions. They demonstrated to Vera 4's people how to move safely through dangerous terrain, how to use natural resources for medicine, and how to remain unseen by enemies. By evening, the city was buzzing, not with fear but with activity. People carried water, cleared debris, and constructed shelters. Children helped gather medicinal plants, and even the sick were included in tasks they could manage. For the first time in months, the community felt united, working towards survival rather than despair. Elder Kieran walked among the trainees, observing quietly. He could see the changes already. Soldiers moved with greater confidence. Civilians carried themselves differently, their eyes sharper, their bodies more alert. Even the children, once shy and frightened, were learning. It was a slow transformation, but it was real. "Who are they truly?" asked Lyra, as she watched Kale train a group of young men to climb over walls and through narrow alleys. "They are humans," Kieran replied. "But humans shaped by the deadliest worlds. They have endured what we cannot even imagine, and now they teach us to endure as well." As night fell, Kyle gathered the leaders once more. "You are changing," he said. "But change alone is not enough. You must understand the land, the city, and yourselves. When the raiders come, you must act without fear, without hesitation. Survival is not about strength alone. It is about understanding and using every advantage." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Do not depend on us to save you. We are here to guide. You must save yourselves." The following days were filled with training, observation, and preparation. The Deathworlders worked tirelessly, often ignoring their own exhaustion. They moved through the city, the forests, and the rivers, transforming every corner into a place of potential safety or strategy. Meanwhile, scouts reported the raiders' progress. Their ships were approaching faster than expected. Panic began to stir among those who had not yet fully adapted. But Kale's presence steadied them. "Fear is natural," he said, addressing a group of anxious civilians. "But fear is useless if it controls you. Learn from it, use it, but do not let it rule you." One day, a small group of trainees reported a surprise encounter. While practicing a patrol in the outer forests, they had come across a group of alien raiders scouting the area. The Deathworlders moved swiftly, demonstrating how to set traps, create diversions, and retreat safely when necessary. The trainees watched closely, learning tactics that would have seemed impossible just a week before. By the end of the week, Vera Ifu's people were no longer merely waiting for help. They were preparing to defend themselves. Every alley, every street, every tree, and every river could now serve as part of a plan. Fear was being replaced by confidence, confusion by understanding, and despair by determination. Kale and Sira met privately in the evening. "They are learning fast," Sira said, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "They may survive the raiders, but the plague—" "It is still a problem," Kale nodded. "We slow it down. We protect as many as we can. That is enough. Survival is not perfection, it is persistence. And these people, they have it in them." "I see it." In the city square, Elder Kieran addressed a gathering of citizens. "Look around you," he said. "See what has been done in just a few days. The Deathworlders came to help, but it is we who are learning to survive. This is only the beginning, but it is a beginning that gives us hope." People cheered quietly, some with tears in their eyes. Children ran through the streets, mimicking the training they had watched, imagining themselves as protectors of their city. Soldiers moved in formation, their confidence growing. And above them, the twin moons shone brightly, as if lighting the path to a future they had thought lost. Kyle watched from the edge of the square, his expression unreadable. He knew the raiders would not wait long. He knew challenges were coming that could test every skill, every lesson, and every ounce of courage Vera 4 now possessed. But he also knew something else: the people were learning. Slowly, steadily, they were becoming a force capable of surviving. "Let them rest tonight," he said to Sira. "Tomorrow we continue. We prepare them for what is coming." Sira nodded. "They may surprise us, Kale. They have already surprised themselves." And in the quiet of the night, as fires burned and the city slept, a sense of determination settled over Vera the 4. The Deathworlders had arrived not with promises or guarantees, but with a gift far greater: knowledge, guidance, and the hard truth that survival demanded courage, adaptability, and the will to rise even in the face of fear. For the first time in months, Vera the 4 felt alive. The sun had barely risen over Vera 4 when the scouts returned with urgent news. Alien raiders were closer than anyone had expected. Their ships, dark and sleek, moved with deadly precision through the outer atmosphere. These were not careless invaders. They were experienced fighters, confident that Vera the 4 was an easy target. The people of the planet felt a mix of fear and determination. For months they had been preparing, learning from the Deathworlders. Now the lessons would be tested. Every skill they had practiced, every strategy they had learned, would be put to use or risk being wasted. Kyle called an emergency assembly in the largest city square. Soldiers, civilians, and council members gathered, their eyes fixed on the tall, imposing figure of the Deathworlder leader. He did not shout, he did not panic. He simply spoke, his voice calm but commanding. "They are coming," Kale said, "and they expect an easy victory, but we will not give it to them. Every street, every building, every tree, every river, use it. The city is your weapon. Your minds are your strength. Your courage will decide the outcome." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Fear will come, doubt will come, but you are not helpless. You are not weak. You are learning to survive. And survival is power." The first group of soldiers and volunteers moved to the city's outskirts, following instructions from Kale and the Deathworlders. They set traps in narrow alleys, reinforced weak structures, and disguised natural hazards as deadly obstacles. Civilians carried supplies to hidden caches, while scouts marked safe paths and escape routes. Every action was deliberate, every step calculated. Meanwhile, Sira led a team to fortify the riverbanks. They created barriers that could slow enemy movement, camouflaged trenches for ambushes, and channels that could redirect water to flood certain areas if needed. She worked with the locals, teaching them how to use the natural environment as an advantage. Even the plague still present was addressed. The Deathworlders organized distribution points for the medicines they had developed, instructing doctors and volunteers on careful administration. They worked tirelessly, moving from district to district, ensuring that as many people as possible were protected. By the afternoon, the first signs of the raiders appeared in the skies. Shadows of their ships darkened the land and the air buzzed with tension. Soldiers gripped their weapons tightly, hearts pounding, but Kale's calm presence steadied them. "Remember," he said, "this is not just about strength. It is about thinking, observing, and acting. Use your knowledge. Use your city. Use each other. And never give up." The raiders descended, expecting easy resistance. They were met instead with prepared defenders, traps hidden in plain sight, and streets that seemed alive with strategy. Civilians moved with purpose, guiding soldiers to ambush points, supplying water and medicine, and even distracting enemy scouts when necessary. Kyle led a small team through the alleys, striking quickly and then disappearing. Their movements were precise, almost effortless. Every strike was calculated, every retreat purposeful. The raiders, though experienced, found themselves frustrated. Their usual tactics failed against a city transformed into a labyrinth of defenses. Meanwhile, Sira coordinated ambushes along the riverbanks. Raiders who tried to cross were slowed by hidden barriers, funneled into narrow channels, and sometimes forced back by sudden water flows. The locals, once afraid of the river, now used it as a powerful tool. The first clashes were intense but short. Raiders who expected weak defenders were shocked to find organized resistance, yet the battle was not over. The city could hold for a while, but if the raiders regrouped and pressed forward, the people would need every skill they had learned. Kyle noticed a group of young trainees struggling. They had learned the basics, but the reality of live combat was overwhelming. He moved beside them, showing how to use cover, how to stay silent, and how to coordinate with teammates. "Do not run," he whispered. "Observe. Decide. Act. Your courage matters more than your strength." The trainees began to mimic him, moving cautiously but steadily. Their confidence grew with each small success, each successful trap, each enemy misstep. The city itself seemed to respond, every alley, street, and building becoming part of the defenders' plan. Even the plague posed challenges during the battle. Some defenders weakened, and the Deathworlders moved quickly to care for them, distributing medicine and ensuring that the sick were protected without slowing the fighting. The people of Vera 4 learned that survival required not only fighting skill, but also care for one another. By evening, the raiders had been slowed considerably. Their numbers were fewer than expected and their confidence shaken. Vera Ife's defenders, though tired and frightened, were beginning to see the results of their training. They were learning what it meant to face danger with preparation, to fight not out of anger but out of necessity and strategy. Kale called a meeting with the leaders once the immediate threat had been pushed back. "This is only the beginning," he said. "The raiders will return. You must continue to adapt. Every day you survive, you grow stronger. Every decision you make matters. And remember, fear is natural, but it is useless if it controls you." Lyra, standing beside Elder Kieran, nodded. "They are learning," she said softly. "Not just how to fight, but how to survive." "We are changing, even in the midst of fear," Kieran agreed. "Yes, and we must remember survival is not just about defeating the raiders. It is about enduring, about protecting our people, about building strength even when the world seems against us." The night brought little rest. Scouts continued to watch the skies and defenders patrolled the city, ready for any return of the raiders. Fires burned throughout the city, not for warmth or comfort, but as signals, lighting, and protective measures. Children were kept in safe areas, yet they watched with curiosity, learning the importance of courage and vigilance. Kale and Sira moved through the city quietly, observing and advising. "They are beginning to understand," Sira said, "but they still underestimate themselves." "Fear is still present," Kyle nodded. "That is normal. But fear can be useful if controlled. Let them face it, let them overcome it. That is how true strength is born." By the next day, Vera the 4 was transformed. The people had learned to use their environment, to work as a team, and to think like survivors. The raiders would return, but the city was no longer an easy target. It had become a fortress, a living demonstration of what courage, intelligence, and determination could achieve. In the forests, trenches, and rivers, teams of trainees practiced ambushes and defense strategies under Kale and Sira's watchful eyes. Each day their skills grew sharper, their confidence stronger. Even the weakest among them had learned to move silently, observe carefully, and act decisively. The first challenge had tested them, but it had also taught them the most important lesson. Survival depended not on luck, not on strength alone, but on the will to endure, the ability to adapt and the courage to face the impossible. As Kale looked over the city from a hilltop, the sun setting behind him, he saw something remarkable. Vera Arvi's people were no longer helpless. They were not yet strong enough to defeat all dangers, but they had begun the transformation into survivors. And that was more important than anything else. Sira joined him, watching the city lights flicker. "They may surprise even us," she said. Kale smiled faintly. "Yes, and that is how survival works. We guide them, we teach them, but in the end they must endure, and they are beginning to do so." In the quiet that followed, the people of Vera the Four prepared for the next challenge. They trained, they fortified, and they healed. The Deathworlders remained among them, not as rulers, but as guides, mentors, and teachers. The first battle had been won, but it was only the beginning. The raiders would return, and the true test of Vera 4's new strength was yet to come. But for the first time, the people of the planet knew they could face danger, adapt, and survive. And in that knowledge, hope burned brighter than ever. The city, once fragile and fearful, now thrummed with determination. Every alley, every street, every river, every forest was part of a plan, and at the center of it all stood Kale and the Deathworlders, calm, watchful, and ready to guide the people through the trials ahead. The first challenge had shown them the path. Now they had to walk it. The night on Vera 4 was restless. Even after the first clash with the raiders, the city's people could not sleep. They had learned much, but fear lingered like a shadow over every street and alley. The Deathworlders moved silently through the city, observing, advising, and preparing. Kale knew the true test was not yet over. The raiders would return stronger and more determined, and the plague was still spreading quietly, unseen yet deadly. Kale called a meeting at dawn with the leaders of Vera the Four, Elder Kieran. Lyra and the generals gathered with their maps and reports. Kale pointed toward the eastern forests where the raiders had first appeared. "They will not wait long," he said. "We can defend the city again, but we must strike at the heart of the threat if we are to survive. The plague will weaken us if we do nothing. We must act. What can we do?" asked Lyra, worry evident in her voice. "We are still not strong enough to face them fully, and the illness continues to spread." Kale's eyes scanned the map. The forest holds resources the raiders do not expect. It also holds the cure. Deep in the terrain are plants and minerals that, when combined, can neutralize the plague. It is dangerous but necessary. We go there. The leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Venturing into the forest was perilous. Many had been lost to natural hazards even without enemy interference. But Kale's calm authority left no room for argument. They agreed. Preparations began immediately. Small groups of soldiers and civilians, guided by Deathworlders, packed supplies, protective gear, and medicines. The people moved with a mix of fear and determination. They had learned to trust the Deathworlders' knowledge, but even trust could not erase the danger that lay ahead. Kyle led the expedition personally, with Sierra at his side. They moved swiftly and silently through the forest, teaching the people how to observe, adapt, and respond to every threat. "The forest is alive," Kale explained. "Every shadow, every sound, every movement can be an ally or an enemy. Learn it, respect it, use it." The journey was exhausting. Branches tore clothing and skin, insects bit, and uneven terrain tested their balance. Yet every step was a lesson in endurance. The people learned how to use roots and rocks as tools, how to navigate without leaving tracks, and how to carry the sick safely through dangerous areas. By the time they reached the heart of the forest, they were tired but more capable than they had been days ago. There, Kale showed them the first plants that could be used to treat the plague. He demonstrated how to harvest them carefully, avoiding contamination, and how to combine them with minerals and other resources to create effective compounds. Sira worked with the local doctors, teaching them preparation techniques that would save many lives if done correctly. As they worked, scouts returned with alarming news. Raiders had discovered parts of the forest where the expedition was operating. Their ships were moving closer, preparing to strike. The leaders realized that they were now in a race against time. Gather the cure, protect the people, and prepare for the inevitable battle. Kale made a quick decision. "We split into two groups," he said. "One continues the collection of the cure. The other prepares the defenses. The raiders will not expect us to be organized in the forest. We use that advantage." The first group, led by Sira, carefully harvested and prepared the medicinal compounds, while teaching the locals to do the same. The second group, led by Kale, moved to set ambushes, fortify natural choke points, and create traps from the terrain itself. Rocks, fallen trees, and even streams became part of a network designed to slow and confuse the raiders. The battle began sooner than expected. Raiders appeared in small squads, moving cautiously through the forest. Kale's group was ready. They struck with precision, using the terrain to their advantage. Traps slowed enemy movement. Archers hidden in trees disrupted formations. The forest itself seemed to fight alongside them. The people of Vera 4, once terrified of the dense woods, moved confidently. They had learned from the Deathworlders to observe first, act second. Every ambush succeeded, every trap delayed the raiders, and every enemy misstep was turned into an opportunity. Sira's team worked tirelessly, distributing the medicine to those weakened by the plague, stabilizing them long enough to continue. Children, once hidden away in fear, assisted by carrying supplies and warning of approaching raiders. The entire expedition functioned like a living machine, each person performing a vital role. By the time the sun reached its peak, the raiders were scattered and confused. Their original strategy had failed. They had expected to find helpless victims, not a city of trained defenders and a forest transformed into a fortress. For the first time, Vera 4's people began to realize their own strength. Kale called a brief halt to regroup. "You are learning fast," he said. "But the fight is not over. We must prepare for their main force. They will return with greater numbers. And we must be ready." The return journey to the city was tense. Scouts reported that the raiders had indeed regrouped, preparing for a full assault. The city's defenders worked quickly to reinforce barricades, train new volunteers, and prepare for the next wave. Even those who had been too sick to fight were now helping in other ways, carrying water, preparing medicines, and guiding those less familiar with the terrain. That evening, Kale addressed the leaders again. "You have survived the first challenge in the forest. You have collected the cure, protected your people, and learned to fight with strategy. But survival is ongoing. The raiders will return stronger. The plague continues to threaten you. You must not become complacent." Lyra looked around at the gathered group. "We are stronger than we thought," she said. "We can survive this. We can fight back," Kieran nodded. "And we will. With their guidance, yes, but also with our own courage. The Deathworlders have shown us what is possible. Now we must make it real." As night fell over Vera the Ford, the city was alive with preparation. Fires burned throughout neighborhoods, serving as signals, light, and warmth. Patrols moved silently through the streets, and every resident, soldier, and volunteer knew their role. The city had become a living, breathing entity of defense and strategy. Kale and Sira moved among the people, offering guidance and encouragement. "They are learning," Sira said softly. "Not just fighting, but thinking, observing, and adapting. They are becoming survivors." Kale watched the horizon. "Yes," he said. "And soon they will understand that survival is not given. It is earned. Every day, every choice, every act of courage matters. And they are beginning to see that." The raiders will not know what hit them when the next battle begins. The Deathworlders worked late into the night, checking traps, teaching small groups, and observing the city's defenses. They did not rest because they knew the challenge ahead would demand every ounce of skill, strategy, and courage from Vera 4's people. For the first time, the planet's citizens felt a quiet confidence. The plague still lingered, and the raiders still threatened, but they had seen themselves succeed. They had faced danger and emerged alive. They had learned that even in the darkest moments, preparation, observation, and courage could turn the tide. The first challenge had been survived. The forest mission had succeeded, and the people of Vera 4 now knew something vital. They were capable of more than they had ever imagined. Kale stood on a hill overlooking the city, Sira at his side, and watched as the fires of preparation burned brightly. "They are ready," he said quietly. "Not just to fight, but to endure, to survive, to rise." And in the quiet of that night, with the twin moons shining above, Vera 4 rested not in fear, but in determination. The true battle had not yet come, but the planet was no longer helpless. Its people had begun to transform, guided by the Deathworlders, learning to survive, learning to fight, and learning to endure even the deadliest challenges. The turning point had arrived. Vera 4 would never be the same again. The morning of the final battle dawned clear over Vera 4, but the calm sky was deceiving. Scouts reported that the raiders were gathering in greater numbers, determined to take the planet this time. Their ships filled the horizon, sleek and deadly, a dark contrast to the bright light of Vera 4's twin suns. The city's defenders were ready. The streets, rivers, and forests had been transformed into a living fortress, every corner planned, every path prepared for resistance. Vera Ife's people, once terrified, now moved with quiet confidence. Soldiers checked weapons, civilians carried supplies, and volunteers took their places at strategic points. Kyle and Syrah stood on a high hill, overlooking the city. "Today will test everything they have learned," Kale said. "But they are ready. They have adapted. They have endured. They are no longer helpless," Syrah nodded. "And they have learned something more important than strength or weapons. They have learned to think, to observe, and to act. They will surprise even the raiders." As the raiders approached, the defenders held their positions, silent but alert. The Deathworlders moved among them, checking traps, advising soldiers, and ensuring that every defensive position was secure. Even the youngest volunteers had been trained to move with precision, to communicate quietly, and to support the fighters in any way they could. The first contact was sudden. Raiders moved into the forest near the city, expecting to find weak resistance. Instead, they were met with calculated ambushes. Traps hidden beneath leaves and branches slowed their progress, and defenders, moving silently, struck from shadows before disappearing again. Confusion spread among the raiders. Kyle and Syrah led small squads to reinforce critical points. Using the terrain to their advantage, they struck swiftly and disappeared, guiding the defenders to act in coordination. Soldiers who had once trembled in fear now moved with precision, using knowledge learned from the Deathworlders to anticipate enemy movements and counter them effectively. Meanwhile, Syrah and her team focused on the plague. They moved through the city and outskirts, distributing the medicinal compounds that had been collected in the forest mission. Those weakened by illness were stabilized, allowing them to take part in the defense or assist others. The people of Vera 4 had learned that survival was not just about fighting, it was about protecting one another. The raiders, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, tried to regroup. Their ships fired from above, but the defenders had prepared barriers and cover. Streams of water redirected from rivers flooded strategic areas, forcing the raiders into narrow paths where traps and ambushes waited. Every tactic the raiders tried was countered by preparation, intelligence, and determination. The city itself seemed alive with strategy. Civilians guided soldiers through hidden paths, carried supplies to those in need, and even acted as decoys when necessary. Children, carefully supervised, assisted by carrying messages and watching for threats. Every person contributed and every action mattered. Hours passed. The battle raged in waves, but the defenders held strong. Kale and Syrah moved through the city, coordinating attacks, reinforcing positions, and ensuring that no one was left behind. They did not fight recklessly. Every action was calculated, every strike purposeful. By mid-afternoon, the tide of battle began to turn. The raiders, disoriented and frustrated, were forced to retreat in smaller groups. The defenders pressed their advantage, using knowledge, strategy, and the terrain to push the enemy back further. Vera Ife's people had grown beyond fear. They had become survivors, capable of facing overwhelming odds and emerging victorious. Kyle observed the battlefield from a high vantage point. "They have learned well," he said to Syrah. "Not just to fight, but to endure, to adapt, and to overcome. This is what survival looks like." Syrah smiled faintly. "They have transformed, not because we fought for them, but because they chose to rise to the challenge. That is the difference." As the sun began to set, the raiders were finally driven from the city's outskirts. Their ships retreated, and the people of Vera 4 cheered quietly, exhausted but triumphant. They had survived. They had faced fear, illness, and an enemy that thought them weak, and they had prevailed. Elder Kieran gathered the leaders and key volunteers in the city square. "Look at what you have accomplished," he said. "We were weak, afraid, and sick, but now we stand victorious. Not because help arrived, but because we chose to endure, to fight, and to survive. This is the legacy we will carry forward." Lyra added, "We were guided, yes, but the strength was always ours. We have learned to face danger with courage, to protect each other, and to adapt when the world challenges us. That is a lesson no enemy, no plague, and no disaster can ever take away." Kyle and Syrah prepared to leave. Their work was done here, though the journey ahead for Vera 4 was just beginning. Kale addressed the leaders one final time. We cannot stay. Our path takes us to others who call for aid. But remember this, survival is not given, it is earned. Every day, every choice, every act of courage matters. You have learned this now. Protect it, teach it, live it. Before departing, Kale walked through the city observing the people. Soldiers checked their equipment, civilians tended to the sick, and children played cautiously but confidently in safe areas. The streets were alive, but not with fear. This was life with purpose, guided by knowledge and courage. Sierra distributed small instructional notes to the doctors and leaders. Use these, she said. Continue to train. Continue to prepare. Knowledge is a weapon as strong as any sword or spear. Protect it. Finally, the ships of the Deathworlders lifted from the city, silent but imposing. The citizens watched as the towering vessels disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind a transformed planet. Though the Deathworlders were gone, their presence remained in every lesson, every strategy, every act of courage demonstrated by the people of Vera there as night fell. Elder Kieran and Lyra walked through the city, observing the changes. They have given us more than medicine or strategy, Kieran said. They have given us belief in ourselves and the knowledge that we can endure even the deadliest challenges. Lyra nodded. And we must carry it forward. We have seen what is possible. Now it is our responsibility to protect, to endure, and to teach others the same lessons. The Deathworlders showed us the way, but the future is ours to build. Over the following days, the people of Vera 4 rebuilt, strengthened, and prepared for a new life. The raiders, defeated and wary, did not return, and the plague, controlled by the compounds and methods taught by the Deathworlders, slowly receded. The cities, once fragile, were now fortified. The forests and rivers, once seen as threats, were understood and used wisely. The people had transformed their environment and themselves. In schools, children were taught survival skills alongside reading and writing. Soldiers continued training, using tactics learned in the forests and city streets. Communities organized patrols, health stations, and emergency networks. The lessons of the Deathworlders were integrated into every aspect of life. Elder Kieran addressed the city one final time in a public gathering. We were weak and we were afraid. Now we are strong. We have faced death, disease, and destruction, and we have endured. Let us never forget the lessons we have learned. Let this be our new legacy: courage, knowledge, unity, and survival. Lyra added, The Deathworlders came to us because we called for help. They have left because they always move on. But their gift remains, the understanding that humanity can thrive even in the harshest conditions. That is our inheritance. That is our future. As the twin moons rose over Vera 4, their light reflected on the city and forests. Fires burned in the distance, signaling life, vigilance, and hope. Children played safely, soldiers trained with determination, and the sick and weak were cared for with knowledge and compassion. The planet was no longer helpless. It was strong, resilient, and prepared for the challenges of the universe. High above, Kale and Sierra's ships vanished into the stars, leaving behind a world transformed. Vera had survived, and in doing so, had learned the most important lesson of all. Humanity could rise above fear, endure the impossible, and thrive even in the deadliest of circumstances. The plea for aid had been answered in a way no one expected. Only the Deathworlders had arrived, yet their impact was profound. They had taught the people of Vera 4 that survival was not a gift. It was earned, nurtured, and defended. And in that lesson, the people of Vera 4 found their true strength. The planet would never forget the arrival of the Deathworlders. Their ships were gone, but the spirit of endurance, courage, and knowledge remained. Vera 4 had been reborn, stronger than ever, a testament to what humanity could achieve when guided by wisdom and forged by challenge. And as the stars twinkled above, the people of Vera 4 knew this. They could survive anything because they had learned how to endure, adapt, and rise even when all seemed lost.